Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to today's episode 3 of Love and Knowledge. I'm your host, Mitch Prettyman. Welcome. Took a minute to set up today's episode. I was trying to do it this morning and a group of tree cutters came in. We're cutting down a tree for what seemed like 3 or 4 hours this morning. And I could not for the life of me record because of all the background noise. But I was asking myself, because I had a really good idea, but it just wasn't flowing properly. I was tired. Things weren't right. And so I meditated on this today and really gave it some thought. And what I was trying to articulate this morning wasn't the right message. And as the days progressed, I've been seeing a bunch of different articles on this problem going on in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine, or Hamas. And the big thing here was this whole children getting beheaded and it coming out after President Biden and several other prominent Israeli sources verified it, so-called. And turns out, it's complete fiction. Never happened. And they have now redacted these statements. And it really got to me because, if we can't trust our leaders, are they truly the ones to lead us? Because what's going on over there is wrong on so many different levels from so many different perspectives. My view on things is life is sacred. We look in every single direction across the cosmos, and for light years and light years, we see nothing that constitutes life except us on this planet. And to me, by virtue of that fact, life is rare and therefore sacred. And we take it for granted on this planet just because of how much life there is. And we go to war with each other. We justify, based on wrongs, doing more wrong. And we disregard our moral principles, one of them being truth. And I just was going over, researching, thinking about why people lie, why people disregard their truth. And this really comes from a lack of strength internally, a lack of being able to handle conflict, to be seen as exactly what you are, or to misdirect someone so that you can gain. I compiled a list of reasons. The main one in my research is to protect oneself or one's ego. The self-esteem, the self-confidence aspect of a person is oftentimes directly linked to how they see themselves, their ego. Not exactly what they are, but what they see themselves as. And this is mainly to avoid punishment. When children first begin to lie, it's usually so that they can avoid punishment or gain something that they otherwise may not be entitled to. Candy, extra food, things like that. And some people never grow out of that. Some people never realize why we adhere to truth and why that's a part of the moral framework of being human. If we can't tell the truth, then we can't depend on each other. And the act of codependence is or interdependence, more than codependence, interdependence. Being independent, but also being able to create a lateral structure in between all the nodes of consciousness, all the people. That's what society is an interlink between people. It's a series of agreements so that we don't go tribal and feral and start slaughtering each other over resources. And when so-called leaders blatantly disregard this fundamental tenet of society, things begin to break down. And it seems that our leaders these days, again, so-called, it's like, because I don't really see them as leaders anymore. They have gone so far off the mark, and they have done so much damage because they refuse to adhere to the basic tenets that society is built upon. That it's just, they're not somebody to follow any longer. When we lie to obtain reward, when we lie to justify slaughter, it doesn't make sense. If you're going to perform such an act, why? The only reason that it should even be is because it happened based on the truth of things. To avoid embarrassment, to lie to impress others, to save face, shirk responsibility, hide misdeeds, prevent conflict, preserve a relationship that you yourself don't deserve, or to trigger separation or elicit attention. Getting somebody back, these are signs of weakness. These are not something that we as people should be constructing ourselves with. You hear a lot from Gen Z, oh, these hoes ain't loyal. Or, you can't trust men. How have we allowed ourselves to get to this point? When we lie, we build guilt and anxiety within ourselves. When we can't depend on others, guilt and anxiety is built. So why are we doing this to ourselves, to each other? When a person tells a lie, it often leads to feelings of guilt and anxiety, intensely, internally. And the act of deceiving others can create a sense of moral conflict within the liar, which can negatively affect their emotional well-being. So it may benefit you in the short term, but internally, you are killing yourself. It's like you're making it so that you cannot feel good anymore. Your sense of morality and what you have done are now in conflict. And this creates trust issues within ourselves. We stop being able to trust ourselves, and because others are a reflection of us, of the others around us are our greater self, so to speak, because of how everything is connected. But when we cannot trust ourselves, we project and then cannot trust others. But the biggest problem is if you can't trust yourself because you're repeatedly lying, you're going to assume that others are being dishonest. And being lied to can make individuals more skeptical and less trusting of us or others in general. It's like what you do domino effects out into reality. And more often than not, it's coming right back to you, not to punish you, but to show you what you're doing. Reality is a mirror. What we do in life echoes in eternity, so that the greater consciousness can understand itself. That's the law of karma. A lot of people look at karma or dharma as a sense of cosmic justice. And it's not really justice in the traditional sense, where it's some guy, sitting on a throne is dispensing this. It's It's a physical reaction. For every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction. It's physics. It's an echo. It's a ripple that comes back to the origin point so that the origin can understand, so that there is balance, so that there's continuity. And when we lie to others, we're enacting this sequence. And when there is a lack of trust, society itself begins to lose faith in itself and things break down. We have seen this time and time again over the ages. When are we going to learn? It's a constant battle between chaos and order in the scope of humanity. And we really need some order in these days, because even our leaders are breaking down society as we know it to build it up in a different image, is what it seems. And it's an image that doesn't serve everyone. It serves a very small percentage. And when you use all the resources to serve a very small percentage, the entire structure suffers. This is how cancer works. And this is how so-called elites, I don't even call them elites anymore. I call them the lost. Because they've lost sight of what's important. They've lost sight of why they have power. They've been blessed with ability, yet they misuse their power time and time again, and they lie to the masses time and time again. Truth is the only commodity that breeds order in any lasting capacity. When we lie, we create cognitive dissonance, which is psychological discomfort caused by holding contradicting beliefs and values. When someone lies, they experience a conflict between their action and their internal moral compass. This internal conflict can lead to stress and a negative impact on mental well-being. So you're going to be at odds with yourself. And when we are at odds with ourselves, there are vectors within ourselves. Each and every action, each and every belief within the human psyche has a vector. It has a direction and a magnitude of that direction, an energy level. And when we hold contradicting beliefs or values, these vectors, these directions with energy behind them, are at odds with each other. And if they are severely at odds with each other, then it stops us from being able to act. And that is highly detrimental to a functioning human, number one, a functioning family unit, number two, a functioning friend group, number three, and a functioning society, community as a whole, number four. Eventually, a whole entire world can be consumed by this. If you take a look at all the monoliths, the megaliths that are set in stone around the world, all these ancient sites, these temples, we can see that there are levels of technology that humankind reached at one point in the past and has never reached again. We once were able to lift multi-ton stone blocks. We were once able to fuse those blocks together with impossible precision so that you couldn't even fit a paper in between each. The resonance of these structures can heal the human body. They resonate. Pyramids at Giza resonate, I think, at the note of C, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but the point is there is technology intrinsic to how we built long ago that we no longer have. And that, to me, indicates that at one time the connectivity of our society was at a very high functioning level. And at times when we function at greater degrees, we achieve miraculous things. The internet is a prime example of this. Because what is the internet? It's a connection of a bunch of different servers. It's a sharing of information. It's when we let the ego down and we are able to share between each other. And that only comes from the ability to be able to depend on each other. When we have countries at odds with each other, it limits that connection. When we have peoples that do not trust each other, we are at odds and then can no longer share. We can't connect. And the world becomes darker. We become less as a world. And that's what we really have to look at. Now that we can see each other, hear each other, translate each other's words in seconds because of our AIs, we need to really understand the gift that we've been given before we make a mistake and ruin all that. When we lie to each other, we strain relationships. When someone discovers they've been lied to, it leads to feelings of betrayal, hurt, and anger. And repeated lying erodes the foundations of trust in a relationship, and it makes it difficult to rebuild and maintain healthy connections. Trust is gained in drops but lost in buckets. Creation is slow, destruction is quick. We need to really start with ourselves, be honest with ourselves, so that we can really focus on what we're working with. Because if you lie to yourself and you tell yourself, oh, I'm actually this, I'm so much better than I am, and you deny the need for improvement, that you can't even start, because you have all of this fluff in the way that you cannot build on whatsoever. Building a diamond or a ruby inside a reactor, you start with a grain of that diamond. If you start with an imperfect grain, an imperfect seed, you're going to get an imperfect product on the other end. You think of yourself as more than you are, and then you start to build on that. Eventually, the structure will collapse in some sense, and you're going to have to start at square one again. Bernie Madoff, for example. So he started off with this idea of investment. He got all these people to invest, and it's a Ponzi scheme. The structure's not there. It's meaningless. It doesn't make the money that it should have been making had he structured it properly. And the entire thing collapsed, and so many people lost because of that. When we consistently lie, we can affect that self-perception, that self-esteem. And when someone engages in dishonesty, they may start seeing themselves as untrustworthy or lacking in integrity, which can have negative consequences on their self-image and overall psychological well-being. If we can't trust ourselves, we sure as hell are not going to be able to trust others. And that is such an important thing to have when you're doing business with other people, when you're starting relationships with people, so that you can create families and community and have this beautiful, rare, sacred event called life go on. The stress that is induced by engaging in this requires so much mental effort. The fear of being caught and the need to remember the details of the lie can cause a ridiculous amount of stress in an individual, and ultimately will breed inaction and disconnection on a level that paralyzes them from being able to interact with others. When we respect each other, instead of treating each other as objects to satisfy the simple desires to get something or to not get in trouble, it's like so much is achieved. When you treat somebody else with respect, you maintain a sense of human dignity. Respecting others acknowledges their inherent worth and dignity as human beings. When we treat others with respect, we recognize and honor their rights, autonomy, and individuality. This fosters an environment where people feel valued and appreciated, leading to an increased self-esteem, well-being, and sense of belonging. When we value others enough, they automatically want to connect. It increases their worth. It increases their ability to function. When you treat another person as a toy, as a resource, which is so common in this age, because the ability to connect with other people has never been greater. Yet, because of this smorgasbord of social media, this ability to connect, we will just use one person and then move on, and then move on, and then move on. And we never realize that when we engage in that kind of behavior, because you look at it as, oh, I'm not being affected, when, oh, you actually are, because you're holding on to this idea about yourself. Your psychology is eroding over time. Your moral compass is becoming more and more warped. And morality is, in essence, based on the ability to maintain and support life. Morality is there because when we don't pay attention or we don't live by moral principles, life falters. And we don't want that. We want to go on. Our ego begs it. Our root chakra begs from us, go on. And so when we disregard that instinct, when we use our throat chakra to lie, to create imbalance so that we can have extra, then we are basically telling our root chakra, I'm sorry, buddy, but I don't really care. And that's not good enough, because we will be busted back to private. You will be busted back to bacteria, back to your component atoms even, if that gets bad enough. If nobody can trust each other and they perceive you as a significant threat, like let's take it up to a country level. It's like that's when the nukes fly. And that's when life ends. The Bhagavad Gita talks about weapons that were brighter than the sun, that could diminish a city in an instant, render it to ash, and then nobody could live there. It's like, what does that sound like? This is not the first time that we've developed atomic weaponry in history. And when we don't pay attention to basic tenets, eventually we as a society falter and are rendered to dust. And we have to do it all over again. I'm sitting here like, is it that hard to figure that out? We are smart enough so that we can recognize this. Why let the ego get in the way so that we cannot go on, so that we cannot reach the next level of existence? When we respect each other, we build trust, and that breeds cooperation. Respect is a fundamental element in building trust and fostering healthy relationships. When individuals feel respected, they are more likely to trust one another, communicate openly, and collaborate effectively. Respectful interactions create a positive social atmosphere that encourages cooperation, empathy, and understanding. To trust somebody is to allow their knowledge in. That's why it breeds understanding. That's why it breeds empathy, because you can be open. You can see that that person is going through their own things, is working with similarities that you are working with to build themselves. No two people are the same, but we are similar. And when we respect each other, we are able to collaborate. That is the cornerstone of society. It's like, I won't kill you, you won't kill me, I won't steal from you, you won't steal from me. When aliens look at Earth, if there are aliens, I mean, and there's a lot of stars and galaxies out there, so the odds are pretty much in that favor. There may not be a lot of life out there, but it's probably out there. If they were to look at us right now, they would probably be rendered speechless. How are they doing this to each other? They have society, but then they have elements within society, especially in the leadership, that will steal from the masses using taxes or stock market to shift huge sums of money to them, and then they misuse it because their egos won't allow them to work with the rest of humanity, because they think themselves better. They think themselves more deserving when they haven't done the work. They don't recognize their role in this. To be a leader is to be an exemplar. And if you are given resources by the community to create more stability for the community, why would you ever use it for yourself? That is weakness on a level hitherto undreamt of. And it's something that we need to rectify before it's too late. If you let cancer go on too long, it eventually kills the body. If you let leadership lie and get away with theft and use it to start war after war after war so that they can profit, so that the society never truly forms a continuity to get to the next level. If we worked together as a race, as one human family, what could we achieve? What if we all collaborated? We would crack fusion within the decade. We would be able to build endlessly because we would use hemp as a fuel source. You know, you can use hemp as diesel fuel, yet they're still drilling it out of the ground when you can grow it. You can use hemp to build. You can make hempcrete, which is fireproof up to 6,000 degrees. It is as strong as concrete. It is bug resistant, mold resistant, and it cleans the air. California fires, say goodbye. But we're still trying to operate a system where only a few of us control the resources and therefore get all the benefit, while everybody else is left lacking. If we restructured a few small things about society, primarily restructured how we saw ourselves, restructured our own perspective, then we as a people would thrive. There would be enough for everyone. We can engage in vertical farming. We can distribute the population over the surface of the planet so there are smaller communities, because humans operate better in smaller groups because more people know each other. And that is a proven fact that I think it's like after something like 500 people, it's like you can't keep track of everybody and you start caring less. Right now we have these huge metropolises where we're concentrated into these little tiny areas because we're all trying to get a piece of this pie. When in reality, if we upped the education for everyone and taught engineering, taught how to grow resources that could give everybody what they needed, it still blows my mind about the hemp thing. You can make clothes, plastics that break down, you can make houses, you can make oils, you can make foods, you can make fuel, all of these things. And then if you were to put tokamaks into that mix, fusion reactors, we would have enough electricity, we would have enough building material, we would have enough clothes. And then if you added vertical farming into the mix, tried to make the populace healthy instead of feeding them crap and then selling them treatments instead of cures. It's like so much, like 90% of our problems medically come from what we eat. It's like I studied cancer for a long time. I got my degree in bio, my undergrad. My primary focus was to study cancer because I lost both my grandpas to it. And I worked in a cancer identification lab for a year. And I had 174 names come through my hands every single day. And I knew that most of those people weren't going to make it, because we're still using a modality that we've been using for 100 years. And radiation and chemotherapy, it's going to do damage to your body in the long run. It's like it may cure you in the short run, but the damage it does to your body it's like that's where you're probably going to get more of your cancers, because of the DNA damage that it does. Radiation isn't good for the body. But we're still sitting here lying to ourselves about how many cures there are. The primary one being eat well, don't expose yourself to chemicals. And in the US, it's like we really have a problem with that. If you do a blood toxicity test, Americans are one of the highest blood toxicities in the world. And then we wonder why cancer is so prevalent. Why do we lie to ourselves like this? Why do we disrespect each other on this level? What, for money? Money is paper. Money is a made-up construct. It's a valuation system. If we valued life above everything else and learned how to live in harmony with the planet, we could burn all the fossil fuels we needed. Say we had a whole engineering corps of gardeners whose sole job was to increase the biomass on the planet. That kind of thinking would absorb as much carbon as we were putting out. Trees absorb massive amounts of carbon. That's why when we have forest fires and stuff like that, everything goes haywire. Instead of trying to control the planet through weather modification, which was terrible for humans because they're seeding the clouds with aluminum, strontium, and barium, all cancer-causing, Alzheimer-causing materials. Oh, this is going to cool it down. Dude, you're going to cause a nuclear winter before you do any good. We really have to look at what we have, because the planet can take care of herself. We just need to help her along. We're the stewards. We're the helpers. Just like the bacteria in our skin help us, we need to help her. This is where respect for ourselves, for our society, for our planet breeds conflict resolution. When individuals engage in respectful dialogue, they are more likely to listen to different perspectives, seek common ground, and work towards mutually beneficial solutions. This reduces aggression and the potential for destructive conflicts within society. When we respect each other, we listen to each other. When you give respect, more often than not, you're going to get it back. And when we do that, when we listen to each other, solutions are generated. Information is shared. When we give love, because that's what I equate respect to, is a form of love. We get knowledge. And that's what this podcast is about, is sharing knowledge out of love for my fellow humans. I don't agree with everything that goes on, but what I do know is life is sacred, and I love you guys. And I really, really want to see us reach the next level. I want to see us colonize the solar system. I want to see us get to Proxima Centauri. I want to see us bend energy in such a way that we don't have to use rockets We can just jump from one point in space-time to the other, seemingly by thought. It's like, I want to know, I want to test the bounds of consciousness, the bounds of existence with y'all. And we're never going to get there if we don't shift little things about how we interact with each other. When we respect each other, we facilitate a sense of equality and fairness. Treating each other with respect supports the principles of equality. It means recognizing and valuing the diversity of individuals, including their identities, their backgrounds, their opinions, even if you don't agree. Respectful treatment promotes inclusivity and reduces discrimination, prejudice, and social divisions based on factors like race, gender, religion, socioeconomic status. Also, more than diversity, we need to focus on unity. We need to focus on the fact that sharing our knowledge, sharing our culture will produce a worldwide culture, will produce one world. If we can all get together under that matrix, under that structure, we can proliferate throughout the stars. That is our birthright. We are the only life in this sector of the universe, as far as we can tell. Our obligation is to spread that life to as many star systems as possible. How are we ever going to get there if we can't respect each other? Because if you think the divisions between races or countries is bad, think about what happens when we colonize Mars or we colonize Proxima Centauri. Think about that. What kind of division, what kind of hate could be achieved when it's like, oh, they're Martians, they're Centaurians. Get them. We really need to sort it out now and create a universal sense of morality based on the principles that support life. And truth is one of the biggest ones. When we're truthful with each other and we respect each other, we create a sense of emotional well-being, a sense of belonging. Being treated with respect is one of the greatest things in the world. Everybody deserves that. And when everybody feels that sense of belonging, it encourages them, it nurtures them in a way that allows them to blossom, that allows them to become the most potent version of themselves. And we need to do that. That's what we're here for. When you can become the most authentic version of yourself, others can become the most authentic version of themselves. When individuals experience respectful treatment, they feel validated and acknowledged. This enhances their self-esteem, their self-confidence, the overall mental health of that person. Conversely, treating others as objects for simple desires can lead to objectification, dehumanization, and negative emotional consequences for both individuals involved. Because if you treat somebody else like an object, you're going to expect others to treat you like an object. Because what you do, even if you're the strongest one, will be proliferated back upon you. No matter how strong you are, no matter how high, that center drop of a ripple rises. It always falls back into the middle because when it rises, it pulls everything around it in. The surface tension on consciousness of your rise falls back upon you. That's the rule of karma. How you treat others comes back on you. That's why you expect it. Because on an atomic level, you understand how all of this works, because that's just what we are. We understand innately what we are. Our consciousness is based on how this universe is structured. And in turn, our consciousness structures the universe. It's a feedback mechanism, and we need to respect that. And we can start easily enough by respecting each other. No matter what another human does, when you say that person is an animal, that person deserves to die, what are you telling yourself really? You're telling yourself, I refuse to connect with them, to help them achieve their goals in a way mine aren't inhibited. That dehumanization creates a belief that you cannot handle that part of yourself. You do not have the strength to absorb that person's thinking, to connect in a way where it stabilizes that person. If you were in the same situation as that person, you would suicide yourself, is basically what you're telling yourself when you kill another. It's killing yourself, in essence, because we're all connected by the fact that we exist. Our social harmony really depends on our ability to see that we are just different versions of each other. Respectful interactions create a harmonious and cohesive society. When people feel respected and valued, they are more likely to contribute positively to their communities, to engage in pro-social behaviors, and promote the common good. Respect fosters a sense of unity, empathy, and social responsibility, leading to a more harmonious and inclusive society. Just imagine if Israel and Palestine respected itself enough to say, we are all human. Nobody should be penned up like animals. We can share this land. Just imagine. I know it's difficult with everything going on, but there has to be a balance to the hatred here. There has to be good and love injected into this situation before all is lost. If you go fully on the war path and destroy an entire culture because of the actions of a few, the ripples of that effect could be catastrophic. And that is why we need to have conversations like this, to be strong enough to admit to ourselves that we are all the same, and at least try to get along with each other. Try to see from the other person's perspective so that everybody gets what they desire. Telling the truth has some very potent effects on society. And being truthful with ourselves like this is very important. It promotes integrity and self-worth. Telling the truth aligns with a person's sense of integrity and moral values. When someone consistently tells the truth, they develop a strong sense of self-worth and a positive self-image. Being honest reinforces a person's belief in their own integrity and contributes to a stronger sense of identity. You gotta be truthful about who you are, about who we all are to each other. If ant colonies fought the way we do, they wouldn't even exist at this point. But ants have existed for millions of years because they were able to work together. Interfighting does not serve us. When we tell the truth, we have a reduced cognitive load. You remember what I said about lying and how much mental space that takes up because of the maintenance of the lie? It's like when you tell the truth, conversely, it's like it simplifies your mental process. It's like when you're truthful about, oh, that person is also me, you're reducing your mental load because you don't have to remember all of the things that you hold against that type of person. Because when we say, oh, I'm so different than you that I can't even deal with you to the point where I'm going to kill you, you're dealing with a sort of delusion that rips society to its core. When someone tells the truth, you don't need to remember the details. You don't need to remember all of the reasons to hate. What a load off. If you just walk down the street and it's just like you feel good because you know that everybody is going to get theirs today. And it's going to be awesome because there's going to be such an exchange of ideas, of resources. Everybody doing their thing. When you tell the truth to yourself, to others, it breeds authenticity and self-acceptance. Telling the truth allows individuals to express their authentic selves. When you're truthful with yourself, it allows others to be truthful with themselves, which in turn dominoes out. You see how important that is? Even if you're the only one, do it. Be strong. Take the initiative. Telling the truth promotes self-acceptance, self-expression. Because when you feel safe, because you know what they're about, because they're good with themselves to the point where they don't deviate from who they are because they feel good, they feel nurtured, they feel accepted. When they can do that, people can openly share their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences without fear of deception or pretense. This authenticity contributes to a greater sense of personal fulfillment and psychological well-being. Just imagine if you could depend on everybody you came into contact with, what might be for society? You know what I'm saying? I get so excited, but my human brain, because of the state of the world, it's like, what? Really? Is that even a thing? Can that work? Like, yeah, it could. It definitely could. The yugas, busting it back to ancient India, they talk about the cycles of time. We're in the Kali Yuga, the darkest of the 4 segments of time, as they see it. In the darkest yuga, there's disrespect, there's mistruth, there's wars, rumors of wars, all the bad stuff. There are other yugas, other parts of our time cycle that there's a book series called The Wheel of Time. It's out on, I think, Amazon Prime right now. But I read the books back in the day. Amazing series. And it's the same thing. It's like they call it the Age of Legends. It's the highest yuga, so to speak. And the most miraculous things were achieved in that age, in an age where everybody had access to resources. The most powerful served the whole. The most powerful saw the purpose, the reason behind using power to serve instead of using power to control. We can't control life. We can't control the flow of life. You can try, but eventually something's going to break. It's water. It's energy. It moves. And to try to control that always ends in failure. Yeah, you may succeed for a short while, but just like every empire falls, every form of control will eventually consume itself. If an empire is built on control, it will eventually corrupt itself, because power with purpose is order. Power without purpose is chaos. Why does power corrupt absolutely? Because when you hold on to power and you consume instead of connect to gain it, eventually the only thing left to consume is yourself. And that is the overarching theme of how you acquired it. The fractal nature of your acquisition leads to destruction if it was built on domination instead of connection. Think about that when you think about who should be the world leaders. When we're truthful with ourselves, Trustworthiness and credibility is fostered. Trusting each other, connecting with each other. The reason why, even in our religious texts, the war in heaven in the Bible, for example, is a prime example of this. When Lucifer comes to God and he's like, all right, I'm going to basically control everybody. I'm going to take away free will and everybody will make it back to heaven. You ever ask yourself why God rejects that? Because fundamentally, Lucifer has never ruled. He's never experienced what happens when you make every point of consciousness do something instead of allowing it to be itself and come back together. Because when you force it, you become it. Put yourself in the mind of God for 2 seconds. If you were to force everyone to do something, if you could get inside their mind and make them do exactly what you wanted, oh yeah, I've hacked the system, basically. Because some people want to do this whole Neuralink thing. And the problem with that is, well, what if that gives you access to control other humans? What if you could hack a human? Okay, you've done it. You've hacked all humanity. You can make them do whatever you want. They are now objects to you. You can move in and out of every mind at will. Now what? You have no source of the mystery anymore. You have no source of other. You have no source of that part of consciousness is interacting with you out of choice, and you don't know what it's going to do. The fun, the mystery is gone. There is nobody to just give you a hug, because if you're everyone all at once, if you're everything all at once, if you control all things all at once, and you don't allow anything to have any sort of autonomy, the only thing that you really now have to contend with is unlimited loneliness. Imagine being God for a second. Why is free will allowed? Because without it, you're all alone, because you are all things all at once. And the only thing left to do is consume yourself. You have to go insane. You have to shatter that connectivity, because it was done under a pretense that belied choice. Let that sink in. To choose to connect is far greater than to be forced to connect. The great lie is that coercion is more effective. It takes a lot more work to connect by choice. But that's the fun of it. That is something that we could spend eternity doing, because it's always shifting. It's always a balance. There's always going to be moments of imbalance, and that's okay. But we all have to respect that, respect each other, and be okay with what happens. Because, as we all know, shit happens. Life happens. But being real about it, telling the truth, taking the hit for who you are, instead of lying and saving face, will always be more fulfilling and rewarding. And I want to leave it on that note. So just think on what I've said, get back to your day, enjoy, and I'll see you next time on Love and Knowledge.